At this point, I'm very confident that you already know who The Weeknd is. He probably doesn't need much of an introduction. He's been at this for over 10 years. The trilogy made him an R&B star, and around 2015, a turning point in his career hit, and he suddenly was able to top the charts for years and years. Well, I say years and years, it's only been 6 years since 2015, but it just does feel like he's been around longer giving us hits. I think it's just because he puts out so much music in such a short period of time, and I'm sure at this point you've heard many of his massive singles. This man has a greatest hits compilation at the ready already, and he is still with us, and he's going to be giving us more music for years and years to come. But yeah, I could probably make a 20-track, 30-track greatest hits compilation from this man. He is that good. He is a killer man when it comes to singles. Starboy, I Feel It Coming, Can't Feel My Face, In the Night, The Hills, Blinding Lights, Save Your Tears, In Your Eyes. What else could we go with? There's more. Take Your Breath. How many do I need to list? False Alarm, Hardest to Love, and that's not even mentioning the trilogy. The trilogy has so many great tracks there as well. God damn, The Weeknd is fantastic. I love this guy, and I've been crying out for this man to go full pop. I feel like he's been teasing at it. He's been teetering with it. He's been kind of edging us towards it for many years now, and I've just been hungry. I've just been hungry for it. I've just been wanting him to just take the leap, go full pop. The R&B days were amazing, but you're never going to top what you did in that 2011 era. I just don't see it. I just don't see him making an R&B album that's in that style that would ever be as good as any of the ones that he dropped back then. So pop is the way. You can make a jam that feels everlasting and can be on the radio for the whole year, and it never gets old. I don't think Blinding Lights is old yet. I still feel like that song is as good as it was when it first came out, and you could argue it's been overplayed to shit, but The Weeknd just has some star power, some star quality in him that just makes me think he is just destined to be a mega pop star that can just put out a full album, straight up pop jam after pop jam, and it would hit. And he's finally done it. Dawn FM is that album. Personally think the R&B stuff was dried up by the time we got to After Hours, which is a very popular album. People were raging about it not getting Grammy nominations, which I can understand, but I just don't think that album's quite as good as it's made out to be, in my opinion. I never quite got with every track. I feel like, you know, tracks like Escape to LA, Escape from LA, whatever that one is, they're just a bit dull. And some of the other tracks on there are dull too. But when you get to those big pop jams, it just feels like he's in his bag. And I feel like he knows that now, because that's why he's given us Dawn FM. Immediately sets up this really odd radio theme going through it with the opening track. We know that, you know, this is going to be the main concept for the album, which I kind of feel ends up being a bit shaky by the end of it, but I guess I'll get to that throughout the review. But then he gives us Gasoline, and I feel like this is the one way to alienate all of the people that have wanted him to stay in R&B, because this is the weirdest track on the album. The vocals are so processed and strange. I feel like they work though, but it almost feels like he's kind of like poking at the people that really want him to go back to the days that were, you know, in 2011, because this just feels like he's kind of saying to those people, look, I ain't doing that, and I'm going to give you the weirdest song on the whole album to start with and give you these really weird vocals. And yeah, it's kind of jamming. This is kind of a jam, and for like a good chunk of the album, it is just jam after jam after jam. I am grooving for like 5 or 6 songs from here, man. How Do I Make You Love Me is such a banger. Once again, love the vocals on this one where he kind of goes, how do I make you love me? And then like throughout the song, they kind of like go deeper and like a bit like, blah, 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 blah. It's crazy that Swedish House Mafia is on this track of all EDM artists. I mean, he has worked with, you know, other acts in similar vein over the years. We've seen him with like Max Martin plenty of times, but Swedish House Mafia, man, that production credit is just kind of wild to me. But it's a match made in heaven because this track is just so good. And then you get to Take My Breath, which was the lead single, and it's an extended version of that track. It goes way more into the theme of the album with the really heavy retro synth feel that so much of this album is committed to, and it works, by the way. The passages just feel like they're way more immersive and just suck you in and just makes it feel like it's part of the album in such a great way. And the Justice influence on this track is just really hard to ignore. I feel like anything that Justice has put out over the years has that kind of like booming bass feel to it. This track has got it as well. I know some people might immediately think Daft Punk with this song, but I don't know, man. I feel like Justice is all over this. And Sacrifice just is a great moment because it is just such a groovy jam and just makes me feel like this is exactly what I've been looking for The Weeknd to do for so long. And I just think if you are so committed to him staying in the R&B lane, listen to this track and tell me you do not get up and just dance to this shit, man, because he nails this. The Michael Jackson influence has always been there on his pop stuff, but I can't escape it at all on Out of Time. I feel like this just slips straight into some of his, 70s, 80s output. I'm thinking like Off the Wall and Thriller. You know the tracks I'm talking about, the slower R&B driven tracks such as like Girlfriend and some of the ones on Thriller as well. And he just nails this, man. Out of Time. Just an instantaneous hit for me. I just sing along to this, and it reminds me of when the Silk Sonic album came out, and every track just felt like you could just sing your heart out to each one. This gives me that exact same feeling as the tracks from that Silk Sonic album had. I mean, they're very different in terms of how they sound, but it's just that same feeling I get listening to it. Absolutely love this one. And before this, we even get the Quincy Jones tale, which is really cool to have. Hammers in the Michael Jackson influence even more though, because obviously Quincy Jones was a big part of Michael Jackson's music and many other artists' music over the years. Quincy Jones is a certified king, a certified legend, man. The amount of credits he has to his name is ridiculous, but it's an interesting moment though, because he's talking about how his upbringing ended up influencing his relationships in the future. And he didn't really realize it until he got to a certain age. He doesn't specifically say what age it is. But I feel like this is quite a breakthrough moment for The Weeknd though, because it feels like one of the first moments in his career where he's just acknowledging that maybe a similar sort of thing that impacted Quincy has impacted The Weeknd, because all of his songs are very much about that, how he can't really keep girls around, how he's, having different girls in his bed every other night and things like that. And I just feel like this is very purposeful having this here, and it's very interesting to have this on this album, because it's almost as if The Weeknd has it's finally sort of like letting that side of him go. That's in the past now. He's a new man, he's in his 30s, perhaps he could even, be at a point where he feels as though he's grown up. Don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into that tale that Quincy throws in there, but I feel like there's a purpose for that being there for me. And Out of Time is just the point of the album, this where things get a bit rough, because that track is just so good. And you do have Jim Carrey's random little thing at the end, which I kind of feel like you don't need, but even still, you get like 3, 4, maybe 5 tracks after this that I'm just a bit like, Here we go again. Straight up the worst track on the album, man. This just sucks the energy out of this whole thing. The instrumental is like some Lionel Richie shit. And it's just so slow and sluggish. The Weeknd's doing his old kind of like R&B flow that he's been known to do. Not that I'm against that, by the way, but I just don't think his singing fits the album, because the album throughout hasn't had tracks where he's singing like this. So this one just feels a bit out of place. And then Tyler, the Creator, comes in. And let me ask, man, who heard this instrumental and thought, Tyler, the Creator, he would love this. He would be amazing on this. Who the hell did that? He's so out of place. I know he's gone in a bit more of like a gooey synth direction since Flower Boy and then obviously Igor. But those tracks have different style of production compared to this. Yeah, sure, they're very synth heavy and synth driven. But man, Tyler the Creator is not the man for this beat. What? Of all the features You could have had anyone on this album. Why Tyler? I just don't get it. Yeah, this track is not good at all. Best Friends, I also think is a bit clunky and awkward. The synths that kind of like bounce around like lasers and it's like boom, bottom. I just think that sounds a bit awkward, to be honest. I feel like the lyrical theme, it just isn't great either, is it really? Kind of funny as well that I was just talking about the Quincy Jones thing. Being about how the Weeknd maybe is acknowledging, you know, his place in life with relationships and things, and then this track kind of reverts back to what he's always sung about. I just don't know about this one, man. And Starry Eyes is just ridiculously forgettable too, man. I just play this one and every time it goes off, I'm like, what did that one even sound like? I just don't remember it. Every Angel is Terrifying kind of brings back the really committed, over-the-top radio theme, which I kind of find this one a bit silly and a bit, you know, over-the-top, but it kind of works. I mean, you could definitely imagine this being on a radio station, particularly of the era that The Weeknd is so obviously paying homage to. I totally get that, but it's just a bit in your face and a bit much, although, you know, the random things about it being like $3.95, I think it is, shipping delivery for the thing that you can get or whatever it is. I do think that the things like that are a bit funny as well, but yeah, I mean, I'm not going to play this and just, you know, be hyped to go back to this. It works for the theme, I suppose, but it just feels a bit like a bit of a chore to sit through. And it's at this point where I'm just a bit like, the theme of the album isn't that great. I feel like the radio sort of style that he's gone for is a bit piss. I mean, if you took it away and you took this track away and you took the opening track away and maybe the Jim Carrey interludes, would the album suffer? Like, I just got to know the answer to that. I've spoken to a few people about this and they're like, nah, they add so much to the album. But like, do they really? Like, do they really? Do you really want to hear those after The Weeknd is putting out some of the best pop music of his life? Do you really want to hear Jim Carrey come through with some random snippet? I just don't know. I just really don't know if they necessarily add that much to the album. I think you could take it all away. Thankfully, the slump, though, that hits us from Here We Go Again does eventually end, but it takes a while and we get back to Don't Break My Heart, which I think is another jam. Just think he's in his bag on this one. And then I Heard You're Married, which has a very silly Weeknd, very Weeknd theme to it, about, you know, the other girl who's kind of like trying to seduce Abel, I guess, and she's obviously married. And he's like, nah, I can't be dealing with this, man. I've heard you're married. It's a bit awkward. We can't be doing this, man. And I'm not trying to downplay The Weeknd's stories or life experiences. And, you know, he's a relatively attractive guy. But how does he have so many cases of this? Like, across the years, he has so many songs that he just has girls all over him. And it's just kind of crazy, man. How did he do it? I've got to message him. I've got to DM him and ask him for some advice. Give me a game, bro. Pass on your game to me. How'd you do it? And then finally, we have what is the best track of the album. The best track. The best. Maybe even the best song he's ever made. I know it's a bold claim, but I really think it could be. This track right here. It's definitely in his top 5. I'll say that. I think it's easily in his top 5. Less Than Zero. Oh my God. This track is the most euphoric song he has ever made. It's the most unique song he's ever made because I've never heard him over this kind of production. Throughout the album, you have the very retro 80s synth pop feel. We've heard him do it before. You know, Starboy, I Feel It Coming, Can't Feel My Face, you could even say. In the Night, they're all very, you know, 80s big in production, very synth heavy. We've heard him do songs like that. But I just think something about Less Than Zero feels so unique, and I just can't pinpoint a time where he's ever sounded like this. The pain coming through his voice, the sort of like realization that he is broken, I guess, as dark as that sounds, but there is just something so heartbreaking about these lyrics and the way he's singing them with so much passion. This idea that, you know, he's trying to take a part of himself away, but he just can't hide it. It crawls in his bed, it's in his head, he just can't remove it. And it's almost like this scary realization that he's not the person he wants to be. I don't know, there's just something so unbelievably poignant about this track. And the way he just kind of like whimpers at the end as well, I'll always be less than zero. What a way to word something, man. I'll always be less than zero. That is the hardest emotional thing I think I've ever heard Abel Tesfaye say. That hits hard when you hear him say that. And the music is just amazing. The production on this track is sublime. This song, man, I can't believe The Weeknd did this. I'm in awe of it. He's always made great music, but there's just something so special about this track. Wow. I've been playing it loads. I feel like it's going to be a huge, you know, year-end list song for me. I know it's early and there's like, you know, only been about 10 days in the year so far or whatever. But like this could be like a top 5 song by the end of the year. It seriously has that power to it. I hope it remains that way as the year goes on as well, because I truly think it could be a special song in The Weeknd's catalogue. And then of course we have Jim Carrey coming back right after this. I think the album could have ended there. I think that track is just such a big statement for The Weeknd and such a powerful musical track for him. I think you didn't necessarily need Jim Carrey coming at the end, especially considering as well, by the way, there's been about 8 songs since you last heard Jim Carrey's voice. So you kind of forget about the theme, you kind of forget about him being part of the album, and he just pops in at the end talking about The Weeknd and things, going very, you know, biblical with bringing up God and stuff like that. I can see why it's necessary to the album and the theme, and maybe closing out a chapter in The Weeknd's life and The Weeknd's career in the way that I think it does. But I don't know, again, I don't necessarily think it adds great amounts to the album's experience. I just don't necessarily think that aspect of the album is very well put together. But overall, I think this is very good. I think it's actually the best album The Weeknd has put out in his pop years. I would say his R&B stuff has always been there. He's always put R&B tracks on every album, but I feel like since we hit 2015, he became mainstream and started making pop songs. And I think since then, since Beauty Behind the Madness, this here is his best album. Since that, it's hard to top House of Balloons, as I know many of his fans would agree with. But if he's going to stick in this direction, the synthpop direction, going forward, I'm for it, because this is very, very good. And while it does have the issues, especially that slump in the midsection, and I still feel like the radio theme isn't delivered in the best kind of way, I still think the music is at times elite. Like, it's elite levels of pop music that it just ends up carrying the album so high. You know, Sacrifice, Out of Time, Take My Breath, these tracks are brilliant. Like, they're absolutely brilliant, and I could play them all day and never get bored. So yeah, I think for that reason, I'm gonna go 7 out of 10. It just falls short of being great though for that slump section. I think you could take those tracks out. It's a 16-track album. You could have ditched a few of those in the middle, maybe make it about 12 tracks, something like that, and I think this would have been great. But yeah, definitely a big fan of this. Let me know your thoughts though. I want to see what you guys think in the comments. I think so far it's got a bit of a mixed response from fans, but I think there'll be people out there that absolutely love this, and I can totally see why. I think it is a very, very good album. Probably going to end up being one of the best mainstream albums of the year too. I know we probably will get quite a few pop artists dropping albums across the year, but I think The Weeknd might lock in one of the best pop albums of the year from a mainstream artist, because this is very good. And I hope it delivers a lot of hits too. I hope the singles he puts out do well, because I think it deserves it. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching as always. Subscribe if you haven't already, and goodbye.